The first customer paid $3 to put through the exact hole my dog had been accused of creating, missed twice, and then asked if the HOA offered a senior discount. I looked at the scorecard in his hand. The HOA doesn't run the course. He looked toward the woman standing at the sidewalk with a clipboard pressed against her chest. Then why is she glaring at me like I owe dues? That's Brenda. Is Brenda part of the course? Only emotionally. My name is Nolan Pierce, and I lived in Maple Ridge Commons outside Boise, Idaho, with a 90-pound Labrador mix named Biscuit, who had the digging instincts of a coal miner and the attention span of a caffeinated toddler. Biscuit was 6 years old, loved tennis balls, hated sprinklers, and had recently discovered one particular patch of backyard soil that offended him on a personal level. He dug exactly one hole. Not a crater, not a tunnel system. One hole beneath the maple tree near the fence, roughly 18 inches wide and maybe 8 inches deep. I filled it once. Biscuit reopened it by dinner, with the concentration of a man trying to locate buried treasure before taxes were due. That was when Brenda Shaw noticed. Brenda served as president of the Maple Ridge Commons HOA, which gave her legitimate authority over shared landscaping and apparently spiritual jurisdiction over loose dirt. She lived 2 houses away, drove a spotless pearl-white SUV, and walked the neighborhood every morning with a stainless water bottle and a clipboard that made people suddenly remember chores they had not agreed to perform. She saw the hole through my open side gate while I was carrying groceries. Nolan. I stopped with a bag of oranges tucked beneath one arm. Morning. What happened to your lawn? I looked toward the yard. Grass continues to exist. The excavation. I followed her finger. Biscuit stood beside the hole with soil on his nose. That? Yes. He's researching. That is not funny. Biscuit sneezed. A small clump of dirt landed on his front paw. Brenda stepped closer. How long has that been there? Maybe 12 hours. You left it overnight? He worked late. She stared at me. Then she pulled a yellow measuring tape from her tote bag. I wish I were exaggerating. She walked into the yard, measured the width of the hole, measured its depth, photographed it from 4 angles, and placed a red plastic marker beside it, as though archaeologists were expected before lunch. Biscuit sniffed the marker. Do not let him remove that, Brenda said. He doesn't read signage. This is a documented landscape defect. It is a dog hole. It compromises lawn uniformity. Temporarily. It also creates a trip hazard. Only if you climb my fence and walk under the maple tree. Visible hazards still affect standards. I set the groceries on the porch. Brenda, I'm filling it. When? Today. Good. She made a note. Then Biscuit picked up the red marker and ran across the yard. Brenda gasped. Get that from him. I called Biscuit. He accelerated. For the next 2 minutes, the president of Maple Ridge Commons chased my dog around a wheelbarrow while he carried an HOA evidence marker sideways in his mouth. Every time she changed direction, Biscuit changed direction too. By the time I traded him a tennis ball for the marker, Brenda's hair had partially escaped its clip. This, she said, breathing hard, is exactly the attitude I mean. His? Yours. I handed her the marker. He's not on the deed. She left without saying goodbye. That afternoon, I filled the hole with topsoil and reseeded the patch. By evening, everything looked normal. At 6 the next morning, Biscuit dug it again. This time, he deposited a rusty bottle cap beside the hole. I filled it again. The next morning, the hole returned. So did a bent spoon. By Friday, Biscuit had produced a marble, part of an old toy truck, and one corroded brass key that opened absolutely nothing I owned. That was when the situation stopped being merely annoying. The house had been built 24 years earlier on land that used to belong to a small family orchard. I had owned it for only 3 years, and I knew almost nothing about what had existed on the property before the subdivision. Biscuit, however, behaved as though the soil contained a personal message. My neighbor, Theo Barron, came over Friday afternoon while I examined the latest object. Theo was 58, recently retired from teaching middle school math, and incapable of seeing an ordinary situation without turning it into a competition. He picked up the brass key, studied it, then looked toward Biscuit. He found this? In the hole. What else? I showed him the collection. He arranged everything on my patio table. Bottle cap, spoon, marble, toy wheel, key. Correct. Theo rubbed his chin. This is either buried history or the world's worst vending machine. Biscuit returned to the hole. I called him away. He sat down and stared at me. Theo stared at the hole, then at my backyard, then back at the hole. No. I already recognized the expression. What? You have excellent slope. I have grass. You have contour. I have a dog. You have potential. For what? Theo pointed toward the hole. Hole 1. I laughed. He did not. The backyard ran long and narrow behind the house, with a gentle rise toward the rear fence. A stone patio occupied one corner, 2 mature trees divided the lawn naturally, and an old retaining wall curved along the side. Theo walked the perimeter as though evaluating tournament grounds. We could build 9. We are not building 9. 7, then. We are not building 7. 16-foot putting lane here. No. Dogleg around the maple. No. Bank shot off the retaining wall. The answer remains no. He stopped beside Biscuit's excavation. You could leave this as the cup. I stared at him. The HOA complained about 1 hole. Exactly, he smiled. Imagine their relief when the other 8 are intentional. That was the stupidest idea I had heard all week. By Saturday morning, I had drawn a course map. The reason was not revenge. At least, that is what I told myself. I liked building things. Before moving to Boise, I had worked for 15 years designing outdoor recreational spaces for hotels and apartment complexes. I knew how to create safe walking paths, low obstacles, simple turf features, and drainage channels without turning a yard into a theme park. Mini golf was absurd, but it was also technically landscaping. I started small. The original Biscuit hole became hole 1. I lined it with a removable metal cup, edged the area with smooth stones, and built a 6-foot putting lane leading toward it. Theo made a tiny sign from cedar. Hole 1, the incident. Par 2, he added a small silhouette of a dog. I told him to remove it. He made the dog larger. Hole 2 curved around the maple tree. Hole 3 used the retaining wall for a bank shot. For hole 4, I built a small wooden bridge over a dry drainage channel. Hole 5 passed through an old galvanized watering can with both ends removed. Hole 6 required putting beneath a row of hanging pool noodles that Theo called the compliance forest. By Sunday afternoon, I had built 6 holes. Biscuit followed the entire process with enormous interest. He stole 3 golf balls. He buried 1 beside hole 4. Theo found it and declared that the grounds department had rejected the ball for improper placement. I added a small wooden hut near the patio for clubs and scorecards. That should have been enough. Then Brenda returned. She stopped at the gate. Her face moved slowly across the yard, putting lanes, flags, signs, bridge, watering can tunnel, pool noodles. Biscuit, wearing a bandana, Theo had printed with the words, "Course Superintendent." Brenda lowered her clipboard. What happened? I repaired the hole. Her eyes moved toward hole 1. That is still a hole. It is now recreational. You built a golf course. Mini golf. In your yard. That is where the yard is. She entered through the gate. I held out one hand. Admission. She stopped. What? $3. Her expression became almost peaceful. The kind of peaceful expression people develop immediately before deciding whether murder is practical. You are charging me to inspect a violation? You are entering the course. I am entering in my capacity as HOA president. Officials are $4. Theo was sitting near the patio with a cash box. He raised one finger. Comes with a pencil. Brenda looked at him. Why are you here? I'm the starter. There should not be a starter. The weekends are busy. There were no customers. Not yet, ma. Brenda refused to pay. I refused to let her enter beyond the gate unless she was conducting an inspection properly scheduled under HOA procedure. She said landscape violations could be visually assessed from accessible areas. Great, I said. Assess from there. She stood at the gate for nearly 10 minutes taking photographs. Every time she tried to photograph hole 1, Biscuit sat in front of it. I did not train him to do that. I wish I had. Brenda sent the first violation email Sunday evening. The subject line read, Unauthorized Recreational Development. She accused me of converting residential landscaping into a commercial amusement facility. She cited signage, course markers, visitor infrastructure, and an admission policy directed toward association representatives. I replied with one sentence, no admission has been collected because no HOA representative has paid. Theo insisted I add a smiley face. I did not. The next morning, Brenda delivered a cease and desist letter. This time, she brought another board member named Walter Keene. Walter was a soft-spoken insurance adjuster who looked permanently surprised to be included in HOA business. He stood beside Brenda while she explained that I had created an unauthorized commercial operation. I asked Walter whether he saw any customers. He looked around. No. Any merchandise? No. Any business signage? He looked at hole 1, the incident. Technically signage. Brenda smiled. I nodded. Does the sign advertise a business? Walter read it again. No. Does the HOA prohibit backyard putting greens? Brenda answered. This is not a putting green. Good. It is worse. Walter looked toward the bridge. It is pretty nice. Brenda turned toward him. That is irrelevant. Biscuit approached carrying a golf ball. He dropped it at Walter's feet. Walter picked it up. Theo appeared from the patio, holding a putter. One complimentary practice shot for first-time visitors. Brenda stepped between them. We are not playing. Walter looked disappointed. That was the moment I understood something useful. The HOA rules prohibited commercial businesses operating from residential lots if they generated traffic, signage visible from the street, or regular customer visits. They did not prohibit private recreation. They also allowed homeowners to host guests, clubs, and social events without approval as long as noise and parking remained reasonable. So I was not running a business. Not yet. The admission sign existed only inside my backyard, and HOA members were not customers. They were participants. I rewrote the sign that afternoon. Maple Ridge Mini Golf. Residents. Free guests. Free children. Free dogs. Free HOA board members conducting unscheduled inspections. $3 appeals, committee. $5. Exact change appreciated. Theo read it. Why is appeals $5? Administrative surcharge. He nodded approvingly. That seems fair. Word spread. By Wednesday, neighbors began asking whether they could play. I said yes. A retired couple came first, then 3 families, then a group of teenagers. No one paid admission because none of them served on the HOA board. I did not sell food, drinks, merchandise, or tickets. People brought their own lemonade. Theo kept score. Biscuit stole balls. The course became fun. That made Brenda furious. On Saturday morning, 12 residents showed up for an informal neighborhood tournament. I had added hole 7 by then, involving a small wooden windmill powered by a hand crank. Hole 8 curved around a flower bed, and hole 9 finished at Biscuit's original excavation. Theo had renamed it. The final appeal, par 4. The winner received a bag of dog treats and no money. Brenda arrived halfway through the tournament with 2 board members and a printed enforcement packet. Residents applauded. She hated that. I am conducting an official inspection, she announced. I walked toward the gate. Scheduled? No. Emergency? Yes. What is the emergency? She pointed toward the windmill. That. I looked at it. The windmill turned slowly. What is it doing? It exceeds approved decorative motion standards. There are decorative motion standards? There will be. Walter Keene stood behind her. He looked uncomfortable. The second board member, Sandra Mullins, looked delighted. Sandra had brought her own putter. Brenda noticed. Why do you have that? I heard the course was difficult. We are not here to play. Sandra looked at the sign. Board admission is $3. You are not paying him. Then how do we inspect hole 7? Brenda stared at her. Sandra opened her purse. I only have a 5. Theo appeared immediately. We make change. Brenda grabbed Sandra's wrist. No. Everyone near hole 6 had stopped playing. 12 residents watched. Biscuit sat beside the gate. Sandra pulled her arm free. Brenda, it is $3. It establishes commercial activity. No, I said. It establishes that Sandra values recreational access. Sandra handed Theo $5. He returned 2. Then he gave her a tiny scorecard. Brenda looked like someone had detonated a legal theory in her lap. Sandra stepped onto the course. Walter followed. He paid $3. Theo gave him the pencil upgrade for free. Brenda remained outside. You cannot charge board members. 2 already paid. They should not have, Sandra called from hole 2. Walter, bank it off the stone. Walter missed. The ball rolled beneath a shrub. Biscuit retrieved it. Residents began laughing. Brenda looked from the course to her own board members. Then she pulled $3 from her wallet. She slapped the bills into my hand. This is under protest. Theo handed her a scorecard. Protests are noted on the back. She ignored him and marched toward hole 1. The entire yard went quiet. She placed the ball on the starting line. The first hole was the original dog hole she had declared a landscape emergency. Brenda swung too hard. The ball skipped over the cup, bounced off a stone, and disappeared beneath the maple tree. Biscuit chased it. He returned carrying something else. Not the golf ball. A small metal box. Mud covered the lid. Biscuit dropped it beside Brenda's shoe. Everyone stared. The box was old, rusted, and about the size of a paperback book. A broken chain hung from one corner. It had clearly been buried deeper beneath the same area Biscuit had been digging for weeks. Theo crouched beside it. "That is new." Brenda looked at me. "What is inside?" "I don't know." "You buried this?" "No. It appeared during your unauthorized excavation. My dog found it." Walter leaned closer. "Should we open it?" Brenda immediately said no, too quickly. Sandra noticed. So did I. Theo looked from the box to Brenda. "Do you know what it is?" "No." Her answer came even faster. Biscuit sniffed the lid. Then he looked toward Brenda. She stepped backward. Something about the reaction bothered me. Not fear exactly. Recognition. I picked up the box. A faded sticker covered one side. Most of the writing had worn away. Only 4 letters remained visible. MRCC Maple Ridge Commons. The neighborhood had existed for 24 years. The box looked almost that old. Theo wiped mud from the latch. Beneath it, someone had scratched a number into the metal. 9. Sandra looked toward the course. Hole 9? That course did not exist last week, I said. Brenda stepped toward the gate. This has nothing to do with the HOA. I looked at her. I did not say it did. She stopped. The yard became quiet again. The mini golf course had started because Biscuit dug one stupid hole. Now that hole had produced a locked box carrying the initials of the neighborhood, and the woman who complained loudest about the digging suddenly wanted everyone to stop asking questions. Brenda tried to leave with the rusted box tucked under her arm. That was the moment Walter Keene stopped looking like a man who regretted attending HOA meetings and started looking like an insurance adjuster who had finally found something worth adjusting. He stepped between Brenda and the gate, glanced at the box, then at me, and said, "I'm pretty sure that belongs to the property where it was found." Brenda tightened her grip. "It is association material." I looked at her. "You said 30 seconds ago it had nothing to do with the HOA. That was before I saw the marking." "You saw the marking before I did." Sandra Mullins lowered her putter. The neighbors stopped pretending they were still playing. Even Biscuit sat beside hole 1, with the expression of a dog who had successfully advanced the plot and now expected snacks. Brenda looked around the yard and realized everyone had heard her contradict herself. She set the box on the patio table. "Fine." Theo immediately moved the cash box farther away. "We do not accept mysterious metal containers as admission." Nobody laughed except Sandra. Brenda did not sit. The box had no visible keyhole, only a rusted latch held shut by age and dirt. Walter suggested photographing it before touching anything else. Sandra used her phone while Theo narrated the process in the solemn voice of a golf commentator. "Nolan Pierce approaches the artifact." I looked at him. "Stop. High-pressure moment. Theo. He has selected the flathead screwdriver." I pointed toward hole 4. "Go repair the bridge." "The bridge is structurally magnificent." Biscuit barked. Theo nodded. "The superintendent agrees." I cleaned the latch slowly. After 20 years underground, it did not want to cooperate, The metal resisted, squealed, then finally snapped open with enough force to make Brenda flinch. Inside were 9 plastic golf balls. Not modern golf balls. Cheap miniature golf balls in faded colors. Red, yellow, blue, green, orange, purple, white, pink, and 1 black. For several seconds, nobody said anything. Then Theo leaned over my shoulder. Well, Sandra looked toward my course. That is weird. Walter picked up the yellow ball. Each ball had a number painted on it, 1 through 9. The black ball was number 9. I looked toward the wooden sign at the far end of my yard. The final appeal, hole 9. Theo looked at me. You did not know about these? No. You swear? I built the course 4 days ago. Brenda folded her arms. This proves nothing. No one said it proves anything. It is probably old junk from construction. Walter examined the inside of the lid. There's writing. A piece of waterproof paper had been taped beneath the metal. Most of the ink remained legible. Sandra read aloud. Maple Ridge Commons. Summer Putt Off. 2002. Theo slowly smiled. Your yard was mini golf before your yard was mini golf. Brenda shook her head. That is impossible. A second line listed 9 holes. Not mine. Different names. Apple Barrel, Windmill Bend, the Orchard Drop, Dogleg Creek, Old Mill, the Schoolhouse, Snake Corner, the Barn Door. Lucky 9. Below the list was a handwritten note. Championship box buried beneath hole 9. Do not lose again. Hank. I stared at it. My property had once been part of a miniature golf course, or at least something resembling one. Theo slapped both hands against the patio table. This is the greatest validation I have ever received. You were not validated. The land has spoken. The land buried plastic balls. That is more support than Brenda has given us. Brenda looked toward the gate. This has no relevance to current rules. Sandra picked up the red ball. It has relevance to why the box says Maple Ridge Commons. It was probably a developer event. Walter looked toward me. Did your closing documents mention anything? No. Theo already had his phone out. Property archives. I pointed at him. Do not turn this into an investigation. He looked offended. I prefer historical, recreational research. That afternoon, we discovered something much funnier than a secret HOA scandal. Maple Ridge Commons had originally been marketed in 2001 with a temporary 9-hole miniature golf course built across several unsold lots during summer weekends. The developer used it to attract families to open houses. Children played free, while parents toured model homes and listened to sales presentations about community spirit. My yard had contained hole 9. The final cup was buried after the promotional course closed. The metal box held the original championship balls. The developer's brochures were still available in the county library's local history archive, and Theo found a scanned newspaper advertisement showing a smiling family beside a windmill. Across the top, "Come play your way home to Maple Ridge Commons." Sandra stared at the advertisement on Theo's tablet. That is incredible. Walter pointed toward the tiny windmill in the picture. Brenda, didn't your notice call Nolan's windmill incompatible with neighborhood character? Brenda looked at the screen. That was promotional equipment. So mini-golf helped sell the neighborhood. That does not establish permanent recreational rights. No one said it did, I said. Theo raised one finger. I did emotionally. Brenda packed her papers. The current issue remains commercial activity. I am not charging residents. You charged board members. Only because you wanted unscheduled access. That is discriminatory. Board service is voluntary. Sandra lifted her scorecard. I enjoyed hole 3. Brenda stared at her. You are supposed to be inspecting. I inspected it with a 7. That is not how inspection works. Then I also scored poorly. The neighbors began playing again. Brenda left. The mysterious box had not saved my course. It did something better. It made the course feel like it belonged to the strange history of the property without creating another legal shortcut. I changed hole 9 that evening. Instead of the final appeal, Theo suggested Lucky 9, matching the original 2002 course. I agreed. Then he tried to rename the entire course Historic Maple Ridge Golf and Administrative Resistance Center. I rejected that. He shortened it to Biscuit Hills. That stayed. The following Sunday became our busiest day yet. Not because I advertised. Because Sandra posted the old 2002 newspaper clipping in the neighborhood group with the caption, "Apparently Nolan has restored an ancient Maple Ridge tradition by accident." Residents loved it. People brought old photographs. One woman named Carol Jennings found a picture of herself playing the original course when she was 11. Another resident remembered winning a plastic trophy at Lucky 9. A man who lived near the entrance claimed he still had one of the original scorecards inside a box in his attic. The HOA comment thread transformed into nostalgia. Brenda tried to shut it down. That made it worse. She wrote, "The developer's temporary promotional activity does not authorize present-day commercial recreation." Carol replied, "Nobody is buying anything." Another resident wrote, "Except Brenda bought admission." Sandra added, "So did I. Worth it." Walter did not comment. He simply posted his score. 27. Theo congratulated him on surviving. Brenda scheduled a formal site assessment for the following Tuesday. This time, she followed procedure. I received 48 hours' notice, the names of 3 board representatives, and the purpose of the inspection. I could not reasonably deny access, so I prepared. Not a trap, a price list. At the side gate, I placed a new sign. Official HOA inspection package. Scheduled inspection. Free scorecard, $1 putter. Rental, $2. Complaining while playing. Complimentary dog treat. Donation. Optional. Brenda arrived with Walter and a landscape committee member named Diane Russo. She read the sign. "You removed the board admission charge. You scheduled properly. So you admit it was punishment." "I admit appointments are free." Walter picked up a scorecard. Brenda looked at him. "You do not need that." "I like records." Diane rented a putter. Brenda stared at her too. "I'm inspecting dimensions," Diane said. "With a putter?" "It is 34 inches long." "That is not an approved measuring instrument." Diane shrugged. "It was $2. I gave Biscuit a treat. The inspection took almost an hour. Brenda measured every obstacle. The windmill remained below the accessory structure height limit. The bridge did not cross water, so it did not qualify as a bridge under the HOA's structural definitions. The putting surfaces used removable outdoor turf laid over existing grass, which meant I had not permanently altered the yard. The flags were temporary. The signs were under the decorative marker limit. The club hut was technically a movable storage cabinet. Every time Brenda believed she had found a violation, Diane checked the rule and discovered it did not fit. Brenda became increasingly frustrated. Finally, she pointed toward the course itself. "You have created a business." "No." "You have a name." "So does Biscuit." "You have equipment." "So does my grill." "You have participants." "So does poker night." "You have admission." "Only for unscheduled HOA entry." "That is payment for access." "Not anymore. Scheduled inspections are free." She looked toward Walter. He was putting hole 5. "Walter." He missed. "1 second. "Walter." He looked up. "What?" "This is an inspection. I'm checking the slope." "With 3 attempts?" "I wanted certainty." Diane laughed. Brenda did not. She completed the inspection and left with no immediate violation. 2 hours later, however, I received an email. The HOA had found a new argument. Traffic. Brenda claimed Biscuit Hills generated excessive visitor parking and pedestrian activity inconsistent with residential use. The course might be free, but regular Sunday gatherings could still constitute a prohibited recurring attraction. That argument was stronger. I had hosted 32 residents the previous weekend. 7 cars had parked along the street. Nobody blocked driveways, but the rule did restrict organized activities that regularly generated noticeable outside traffic. Theo read the email over my shoulder. She finally found something real. Yes, I dislike character development. I shut the course the next Sunday. No visitors, no golf, no scorecards. Biscuit wandered across the empty yard carrying a ball in his mouth. I had expected relief. Instead, the quiet annoyed me. The course had given neighbors somewhere to laugh together. People who normally waved from driveways had spent hours competing over impossible bank shots. Children helped repaint the signs. Retirees argued about par. And Sandra had developed an alarming determination to defeat hole 7. Yet Brenda had one valid point. 30 people arriving every Sunday could become unfair to neighbors. I did not want my revenge to become everyone else's parking problem. So we changed the model. Theo hated the word model. He preferred course philosophy. No organized Sunday gathering. No online invitations, no events, no scheduled tournaments. Biscuit Hills would simply exist as part of my yard. Any resident already walking through the neighborhood could ask to play. No cars needed, no attraction traffic, no recurring event. And because Maple Ridge Commons had walking paths connecting every street, nearly every resident lived within 15 minutes on foot. We reopened quietly. The result was better. People arrived in pairs. Sometimes one family, sometimes a retiree walking a dog. They played, talked, and left. No crowds, no parking, no reason for Brenda to invoke the traffic rule. Then Theo had another idea. Membership cards. No. Walking members only. No. Passport stamps. No. League jackets. Theo. Fine. He waited 5 seconds. What about annual dues? I stared at him. That would make it commercial. Not for the golf course. For what? He looked toward Biscuit. The dog club. I did not let him finish. For once, revenge did not require making everything bigger. The quieter course frustrated Brenda more because she could no longer point to obvious disruption. people simply kept playing. The original dog hole remained Hole 1. The mystery box was displayed in a clear case beside Lucky 9, along with copies of the 2002 advertisement. No historic status, no official plaque, just a funny piece of neighborhood history. Then the shocking moment happened. Not during golf, during a storm. A severe thunderstorm rolled across Boise late Wednesday afternoon. Wind tore small branches from trees, knocked over Hole 7's hand-cranked windmill, and sent one of Theo's scorecards into a neighbor's gutter. Biscuit hated thunder. He usually hid in the laundry room. That evening, however, he stood at the back door barking at the course. I thought he wanted outside. When I opened the door, he ran directly toward Hole 1. Lightning flashed, rain poured. Biscuit began digging. "Biscuit!" He ignored me. I ran across the yard. The hole had already filled with muddy water, but he kept scraping at one side. I grabbed his collar, expecting another bottle cap or piece of old course junk. Then the ground collapsed. Not dramatically, maybe 18 inches. Enough for my boot to sink, and for water to disappear into a dark space beneath the turf. I pulled Biscuit backward. Theo arrived 10 minutes later wearing a raincoat over pajamas because he considered emergencies more serious when dressed incorrectly. We shined flashlights into the opening. There was a pipe, not a small sprinkler line. A large corrugated drainage pipe, cracked along the top and partially crushed. Water rushed through the break and into the soil beneath my yard. Theo looked toward the slope. "That is bad. Yes. Very bad? I don't know." The next morning, a drainage contractor inspected it. The pipe was part of the original neighborhood stormwater system. It ran beneath several private yards toward a retention channel behind Maple Ridge Commons. Years of soil movement had cracked one section beneath my property. Water had been slowly washing out the surrounding soil, creating a hidden void. Biscuit had not been digging randomly. He had been returning to the place where the ground smelled wet and hollow. The original dog hole had been directly above the damaged pipe. If the collapse had expanded, part of my yard could have sunk. Possibly the fence. Possibly more. I called the HOA. Brenda answered. "The course is closed?" she asked immediately. "That is not why I am calling." "What happened?" "We found a damaged community drainage line beneath Hole 1. Silence. "A what?" "Stormwater pipe. On your property? Part of the shared system." "How did you find it?" I looked at Biscuit. He sat beside me covered in dried mud. "My landscape defect." Brenda arrived 20 minutes later with Walter and a maintenance contractor. This time, nobody brought golf clubs. The contractor confirmed the damaged line connected directly to HOA maintained drainage infrastructure. Repairs needed to happen quickly before another storm. Brenda stared at the opening. "All this time?" "Yes." "The dog was digging because of the leak?" "Probably the moisture and smell." Walter looked toward Biscuit. "He found a drainage failure." Theo crossed his arms. "The superintendent has expanded his portfolio." Brenda ignored him. She looked at me. "If you had filled this and kept him away, we might not have found it." The thought settled heavily. Her original complaint had treated the hole as purely cosmetic. Fill it. Restore uniformity. Stop asking why it kept returning. The dog had kept digging because something underneath was wrong. That became the emotional center of the entire mess for me. Biscuit was not a heroic rescue dog. He was an idiot who ate socks and once barked at his own reflection in a microwave. But he had noticed something none of us had. I crouched and scratched behind his ears. "You expensive little engineer." He licked my face. Brenda watched. Then she looked across the course she had spent weeks trying to remove. Her eyes stopped at hole 1. The tiny sign still read, "The incident." She sighed. "You are going to rename that, aren't you?" Theo answered before I could. "Already designing it?" "No." "Yes. No dog-related engineering titles." Theo looked offended. "The public deserves accuracy." The drainage repair required digging up part of hole 1 and hole 2. Biscuit Hills closed for a week. For the first time, Brenda had a legitimate reason to enter my yard without paying anything. She came every day to check the shared repair. On Friday, Sandra joined her. Sandra brought a putter. Brenda pointed toward the excavated trench. "The course is closed." Sandra looked disappointed. "I thought we could inspect hole 3. "We are inspecting drainage." Walter arrived behind them. He had his scorecard in his pocket. Brenda noticed. "Why?" He shrugged. "Habit." By the following Wednesday, the pipe was repaired, the soil compacted, and the yard restored. I rebuilt hole 1, but I changed the cup location slightly to avoid the pipe. Theo unveiled the new sign. Hole 1, Biscuit's Municipal Infrastructure Audit. Par 2. Below it, initial inspection performed without authorization. Brenda read it. Her mouth twitched. I waited. She almost laughed. Then she saw the second line. HOA follow-up inspection. $3 if unscheduled. The smile disappeared. "Nolan." "Policy is policy," she pointed toward the gate. "I have a meeting here tomorrow." "Scheduled?" "Yes. Free admission." She narrowed her eyes. "What meeting?" I had not scheduled one. Neither had Theo. Sandra stepped through the gate, holding a stack of envelopes. "The board did." Brenda turned toward her. "Why?" Sandra handed me an envelope. Inside was a proposal from 12 HOA members. They wanted to hold the next board social at Biscuit Hills. Not a formal meeting. A recreational gathering. And they had included cash. $36. 12 board and committee members. $3 each. Brenda stared at the money. "You cannot be serious." Sandra smiled. "We're paying admission voluntarily." Walter arrived carrying a bag of golf balls. I brought exact change. For weeks, Brenda had insisted my admission policy proved I was operating a business. Now the HOA itself wanted to become my paying customer. And because the payments were voluntary social fees, rather than inspection charges, rejecting them would be the sensible thing. Theo looked at me. I looked at the cash, then at Brenda, then at Biscuit. A much better revenge occurred to me. I pushed the money back toward Sandra. No admission. Brenda relaxed. "Good," I continued. HOA members play free." Theo looked horrified. Sandra looked confused. Brenda smiled cautiously. Then I pointed toward the donation jar beside the course entrance. It had a new label. Biscuit's Whole Fund. All voluntary donations would go toward repairing common area dog stations and replacing damaged waste bag dispensers around Maple Ridge Commons. I looked at Brenda. "Board members can donate whatever they think one hole was worth." The smile disappeared again. Sandra immediately dropped $5 into the jar. Walter added 10. Theo added 3 even though he was not on the board. Symbolic admission, he explained. Brenda stared at the jar, then at hole 1, then at Biscuit. She slowly opened her purse. What she put into that jar the next day would turn one stupid dog hole into the most expensive 3 feet of grass in Maple Ridge Commons. Brenda put $20 into Biscuit's hole fund, stared directly at me, and said, "This is not admission." Theo stood beside the donation jar with a pencil tucked behind one ear. Of course not. It is a voluntary contribution. Absolutely. For community dog stations. Correct. Brenda narrowed her eyes. Then stop smiling. I'm thinking about waste bag dispensers. She knew I was lying. The HOA social began 30 minutes later with 14 board and committee members scattered across Biscuit Hills carrying putters, lemonade, and enough competitive energy to make the backyard feel temporarily unsafe. Sandra immediately challenged Walter to a rematch. Diane Russo brought a measuring tape for strategic purposes, while Neil Morton from the maintenance committee spent 10 minutes examining the restored drainage patch before announcing that Biscuit deserved honorary engineering credentials. Biscuit celebrated by stealing Neil's ball. Course superintendent interference, Walter said. Theo wrote something on the scoreboard. Local rule. Play it where the dog drops it. That is not golf. It is Biscuit Hills. The course had changed during the drainage repair. Hole 1 now curved gently around the reinforced stormwater line, with a blue painted strip showing where the buried pipe ran beneath the turf. Hole 2 had become the second opinion, requiring players to bank a shot off 2 wooden panels, because Theo believed administrative decisions should always bounce before becoming permanent. Hole 3 remained simple. Hole 4 did not. I had rebuilt the little bridge and added a swinging gate beneath it. If a ball hit the gate too hard, it rolled backward toward the player. Sandra called it unfair. Theo called it governance. Brenda refused to use a scorecard. She claimed she was attending only because board participation promoted community relations. Yet by hole 3, she was keeping her score on the back of an envelope. By hole 5, she had started asking Walter what par was. At hole 6, she accused the pool noodles of moving. There is wind, I said. They were not positioned like that earlier. They are pool noodles. They changed my shot. File a motion. Theo opened the tiny complaint mailbox beside the tee. Written appeals accepted in pencil. Brenda glared at him. Then she putted. The ball struck one noodle, bounced sideways, hit another, and rolled directly into Sandra's shoe. Sandra looked down. Do I get to keep it? No. Then I object to the ruling. Theo opened the mailbox again. By lunchtime, the donation jar held $112. Nobody had been pressured to contribute. Most board members simply found it funny that a dog hole had discovered a failing drainage pipe, and several added money every time they made a particularly terrible shot. Walter established a personal rule that every 6 required a $1 donation. He donated $18. Sandra donated $15 because she beat him. Brenda donated nothing after her original $20. That was fine. The entire joke worked because she was free not to participate. What I did not expect was how much she would want to win. At hole 8, the course curved around a bed of ornamental grass toward a narrow cup, guarded by 2 wooden ramps. Brenda studied the line for nearly a full minute. Then she crouched, adjusted the ball, stood, crouched again, and asked whether the left ramp had been moved since the previous inspection. It hasn't. Are you certain? I built it. That does not answer the question. I built it yesterday. She finally putted. The ball climbed the left ramp, rolled along the edge, dropped onto the green, and stopped 2 inches from the cup. Brenda stared. Theo whispered like a television commentator. Devastating administrative shortfall. She turned toward him. Say one more thing. He placed both hands behind his back. Professional silence. Walter laughed so hard that his own ball rolled off the tee. For almost 2 hours, Brenda behaved less like the president who wanted my yard returned to perfect grass and more like a woman determined to defeat a hand-built mini golf course invented by a Labrador. It was the first time I had seen her interact with neighbors without directing them. People teased her. She teased back occasionally. She remained competitive, bossy, and suspicious of pool noodles. But she laughed once, maybe twice. Then we reached Lucky 9. The original 2002 championship box remained displayed beside the final tee. The black number 9 ball sat inside the clear case with the faded newspaper advertisement behind it. Next to the case stood Biscuit's original rusted bottle cap, bent spoon, marble, toy wheel, and brass key. Brenda stopped. What is the key for? No idea. You never found out? No. Theo leaned on his putter. We tried 6 locks. 7, I said. You tried the old pump house? No. Brenda looked toward me. What pump house? Theo and I exchanged glances. There's an old utility shed near the back walking trail, he said. Brick building beside the retention channel. Brenda frowned. That isn't a pump house. What is it? Storage. For what? Old irrigation controls. Theo looked at the brass key, then toward the neighborhood trail visible beyond my rear fence. No. I immediately knew what he was thinking. No. You are thinking it. I am thinking you need lunch. The key came from the original mini golf site. That does not mean it opens an old irrigation building. The developer course had an old mill hole. That is not evidence. Neither was the wheelbarrow bonnet, and yet that succeeded magnificently. Brenda pointed toward Lucky 9. Can we finish playing? For once, I agreed with her. Sandra went first. 4 strokes. Walter took 6. Diane made par. Brenda stepped onto the tee with a chance to win the board social by 1 stroke. Everyone became quiet. She looked down the lane. Lucky 9 had a slight slope toward the cup, but the final 6 feet curved left around a smooth cedar bumper. A straight shot usually failed. Players needed to use the sideboard carefully and let the slope carry the ball inward. Brenda adjusted her stance. Theo whispered beside me. She has been practicing mentally. How can you tell? She stopped complaining about the sign. Brenda swung. Perfect contact. The ball rolled down the center, struck the cedar bumper at exactly the right angle, curved toward the cup, and dropped. Hole in 1. For half a second, Brenda simply stared. Then Sandra screamed. Walter raised both arms. Diane clapped. Even I applauded. Brenda turned around with a smile so large it looked unfamiliar on her face. I won! Theo checked the score sheet. You won! I actually won. By 1. She pointed toward Lucky 9. Write it down. It is already written. Permanent ink. This is pencil. Find a pen. The HOA president, who had once called my yard an unauthorized recreational development, stood beside the same course, demanding permanent documentation of her victory. I enjoyed that more than I expected. Theo handed her a small plastic trophy we had bought as a joke. It showed a golfer swinging. We had taped a tiny cardboard dog over the golfer's face. Brenda read the label. First Annual Biscuit Hills Board Social Champion. Her smile vanished slightly. You named this annual? Optimism, Theo said. She looked at me. There will not be another one. Then she tucked the trophy under her arm. Nobody mentioned that. The social ended without arguments. People walked home carrying scorecards and talking about rematches. Sandra promised to practice. Walter asked whether I could make hole 4 less cruel. Brenda left last. She stopped beside the donation jar. The total had reached $147. She looked toward hole 1. What are you actually doing with that money? Replacing the broken dog waste dispensers near the walking trail. The HOA already budgets for those. Then this can cover better ones. She considered that. Submit receipts. It is voluntary private money. Still. Why? She looked uncomfortable. Because if residents think the board social raised it, they will assume we managed it. I stared at her. That is almost responsible. Do not sound surprised. I am trying. She walked toward the gate, then she stopped. The whole 6 noodles are too unpredictable. That is their charm. They're annoying. They remind me of someone. She looked back. Careful. Then she left. The next morning, I purchased 4 heavy-duty waste bag dispensers, 2 covered trash bins, and replacement mounting posts. The total came to $139. Theo wanted to place tiny plaques on each. I refused. He ordered them anyway. The plaques read, "Funded by 1 hole and several bad putts." I hated them. Residents loved them. Even Brenda approved the installation after correcting Theo's punctuation. For almost a week, the conflict seemed finished. That should have made me suspicious. The first strange thing happened Wednesday night. Someone played Biscuit Hills after midnight. I knew because I found every flag moved the next morning. Hole 1's flag stood at hole 5. Hole 2's flag had been planted beside the patio. Lucky 9's flag was lying across Biscuit's water bowl. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing was damaged. The donation jar remained empty because I brought it indoors after each day. Theo denied involvement. Sandra denied involvement. Walter said midnight violated his bedtime. Brenda answered my text with, "Some of us have jobs. I worked from home." That felt unnecessarily targeted. I reset the course. Thursday morning, it happened again. This time, 9 golf balls had been placed in a straight line leading from hole 1 toward the rear fence. Red, yellow, blue, green, orange, purple, white, pink, black. The same color sequence as the balls inside the original 2002 championship box. I checked the case. All 9 original balls remained inside. Someone had brought duplicates. Theo arrived carrying coffee. He stared at the line. That is theatrical. You sound impressed. I am offended I did not think of it. The balls pointed toward the rear walking trail, toward the old brick utility building. I picked up the brass key Biscuit had found. Theo looked at me. You said no. I changed my mind. Because of evidence? Because someone is being irritating. That is stronger motivation. We walked the trail before breakfast. The building stood behind a row of cottonwoods near the retention channel, half hidden by tall grass. It was small, windowless, and made from red brick darkened by years of irrigation spray. A faded metal sign on the door read, Maple Ridge Water Control. Authorized access only. The lock looked old. Not ancient, but old enough. Theo handed me the key. You do it. Why? You own the dog. That is not a chain of custody. It is emotionally relevant. The brass key entered. It turned. Theo smiled. I would like the record to reflect quiet. I opened the door. Inside, the building contained exactly what Brenda had said. Old irrigation controls, metal valves, electrical panels, shelves of maintenance supplies. Nothing dramatic. Theo looked disappointed. That was anticlimactic. Good. Then Biscuit barked behind us. I had left him at home. We both turned. No dog. The sound came again. Recorded. From inside the building. Theo's expression changed. Did you hear that? Yes. A small speaker sat on an upper shelf. Beside it lay a portable digital recorder. Someone had been here recently. I picked it up. The screen displayed 9 audio files. Theo looked toward the door. Why 9? I did not answer. I pressed the first file. A man's voice filled the utility room. Hole 1, apple barrel. The recording crackled. Then another voice laughed. A woman. Older. Stop pretending this is Augusta, Hank. The man answered. Championship requires ceremony. The audio ended. Theo stared at me. Hank. The name from the note inside the buried box. I pressed file 2. Hole 2, Windmill Bend. More laughter. Children shouting somewhere in the background. Then the same woman. You realize the houses will cover all of this next year, Hank answered. Then somebody better remember where we played. File 3, Hole 3, File 4, Hole 4. Every recording captured pieces of the original 2002 developer mini golf course. Not official announcements. Family recordings. Someone had walked the entire course with Hank 24 years earlier, recording each hole before the lots became houses. Theo sat on an overturned bucket. This is amazing. Who put these here? Someone connected to Hank. The 9th file began differently. No laughter, no children. Just Hank's voice. Lucky 9. A pause. If Nolan ever finds the box, tell him the key still works. My entire body went cold. Theo stood. The recording continued. He won't know me. That's all right. Another pause. The dog probably found it. If that mutt is anything like his mother, he'll dig until somebody listens. I stopped the recording. Theo stared at me. His mother? I looked toward the door. Biscuit came from a local rescue. I knew almost nothing about his life before I adopted him. The file continued playing. Hank's voice returned. Tell Nolan I'm sorry I never knocked. Then the recording ended. The funny mystery had suddenly become personal. Someone named Hank knew my name, knew Biscuit, knew the buried box, and had recorded a message expecting us to find it. Theo looked toward the speaker. That was recent. Yes. How recent? I don't know. The digital recorder certainly was. The old course audio might have been copied from older tapes, but the final message mentioned me and Biscuit directly. We searched the shelves. Behind a stack of irrigation manuals, I found a photograph. It showed an elderly man sitting on the original Maple Ridge mini golf course beside a black Labrador. The photograph was dated 2002. Someone had written on the back, Hank Mercer and Daisy. Lucky 9. I knew the name Daisy. The rescue paperwork listed Biscuit's mother as Daisy. Not 24 years ago, obviously. But perhaps the name had been reused. Or the rescue had guessed. Nothing made sense yet. Then, Theo found an envelope taped beneath the shelf. My name was written across the front. Nolan Pierce. Inside was a letter. I read the first line, then sat down. Hank Mercer had owned my house before the people I bought it from. Not immediately before. Years earlier. He had helped the developer run the temporary mini golf course in 2002 and later bought the lot containing Lucky 9. When he sold the house, he left the old championship box buried because he liked knowing part of the original course remained. The letter explained Biscuit, too. Hank volunteered at the rescue where I adopted him. He had been there the day I chose Biscuit. He recognized my address from the application. And he recognized Biscuit because Daisy, the dog's mother, had been fostered at his property for several months. Biscuit had played in my yard as a puppy. Before I owned him. Before I owned the house. He had dug near the old hole 9 even then. I read the paragraph again. Theo remained silent. Hank wrote that he had wanted to introduce himself after the adoption, but worried it would feel intrusive. He followed neighborhood updates through old friends and heard about Brenda's complaint, the new course, and Biscuit rediscovering the buried box. The duplicate golf balls were his, the flags were his, the midnight rounds were his. At 79 years old, Hank Mercer had been sneaking into my backyard to play mini golf after everyone went home. Theo finally spoke. That man is a criminal. I looked at him. A very slow criminal. Still unauthorized. He is 79. Then statistically slower. I laughed despite myself. The letter ended with an invitation. Hank would come to Biscuit Hills Saturday morning if I wanted to meet him. If not, he would leave the course alone. He had one request. Let him play Lucky 9 once more. I folded the letter. Theo looked toward me. What are you going to do? I looked at the old photograph. At Hank beside Daisy. At the faded course behind him. Then at the brass key Biscuit had dug from the ground. I'm charging him admission. Theo stared. I smiled. $3. His eyes widened. Why? Former course management. Theo began laughing. Saturday suddenly had a new tournament. One player. 79 years old. And somewhere between hole 1 and Lucky 9, I had a feeling Brenda Shaw was about to discover that my dog had not merely dug up a drainage problem. He had dug up the one person who remembered what Maple Ridge Commons was supposed to feel like before the HOA learned how to measure everything. Hank Mercer arrived Saturday morning in a faded green pickup with a dented tailgate, a coffee thermos between his knees, and exactly $3 folded inside an envelope marked Former Management Fee. He climbed out slowly, looked across Biscuit Hills, and stopped smiling for almost a full minute. The little course in my backyard looked nothing like the one from 2002. There was no apple barrel, no barn door, no schoolhouse obstacle, and no developer tent full of smiling salespeople. Instead, there were pool noodles, a hand-cranked windmill, a bridge designed mostly to insult Walter's putting ability, and a Labrador standing in the middle of hole 1 with a tennis ball in his mouth. Hank pointed toward Biscuit. That is Daisy's boy. Biscuit stared at him. Then his tail started moving. Not cautiously, violently. He ran across the yard so fast he slid on the putting turf, bounced off the cedar bumper at hole 2, and crashed directly into Hank's legs. Hank laughed, dropped the envelope, and crouched as far as his knees allowed, while Biscuit tried to climb into his jacket. I stood there feeling slightly unnecessary. Theo wiped one eye. Terrible course discipline. Hank looked up. You must be Theo. Theo straightened. I have a reputation? You moved the flags twice. That was you? Hank smiled. I moved them the first time. Theo looked offended. I moved them the second. For several seconds, they stared at each other like rival vandals discovering professional respect. I picked up the envelope. You actually brought $3. You said former management. I was joking. I'm old. We take jokes seriously because there are fewer left. He handed me another $1. What's that for? Dog. Surcharge. There is no dog surcharge. There should be. I put all $4 into Biscuit's whole fund. Brenda arrived before Hank had finished his coffee. She came alone, wearing walking shoes instead of the usual office flats, and stopped at the gate when she saw the stranger standing beside Lucky 9. She had heard about Hank from Sandra because news moved through Maple Ridge Commons faster than irrigation leaks. That's him? I nodded. The midnight golfer. Hank raised one hand. Former midnight golfer. Brenda looked at him. You entered private property after dark. Yes. That is trespassing. Yes. You moved course equipment. Yeah. You left golf balls. Yes. Did you hit a recorder in HOA utility property? Yeah. Brenda blinked. Hank sipped his coffee. I also once stole a traffic cone from the developer in 2002. Theo whispered to me. I love him. Brenda stepped through the gate. Why are you admitting all this? Because Nolan already knows. That does not make it acceptable. No. Then why did you do it? Hank looked toward Lucky 9. Because I wanted to see if the place still felt like itself. Brenda's expression changed slightly. What does that mean? He rested both hands on the top of his cane. When Maple Ridge opened, it was not polished. Half the lots were dirt. The trees were tiny. The clubhouse roof leaked. The developer needed families to imagine what the neighborhood could become, so we built a temporary mini golf course out of plywood, barrels, old farm tools, and whatever else we could borrow. Theo nodded approvingly. Proper architecture. Hank continued. People came to look at houses and stayed to play. Kids met each other before their parents bought anything. Neighbors who eventually lived 3 streets apart first argued over putting scores. He smiled. That is how Maple Ridge sold homes. Brenda folded her arms. This neighborhood has evolved since then. Of course. I'm not suggesting anyone rebuild 2002. Good. I am saying the place did not begin with rules. The yard became quiet. Hank pointed toward Biscuit Hills. It began with reasons to stay outside. That sentence hit differently than I expected. I had built the course to annoy Brenda. Then neighbors began playing. Then the drainage pipe failed. Then Biscuit uncovered the buried box. Somewhere along the way, revenge had accidentally become community. Brenda looked around. Sandra had arrived with Walter. 2 families walked down the path carrying putters. Nobody had driven. Nobody was blocking a street. Nobody was buying tickets. The course simply existed. Hank handed me his cane. Time to play. I gave him a putter. Theo offered a scorecard. Hank refused. I remember every score I need. He started at hole 1. Biscuit followed beside him. Hank took 3 shots. Then he dropped $1 into the donation jar. Triple bogey tax. That rule doesn't exist, I said. It does now. Hole 2 took 4 strokes. Another $1. Hole 3 went better. At hole 4, Hank stopped on the little bridge and looked toward the maple tree. This section used to be apple barrel. You remember exactly? I built it. What was there? 6 apple crates and a plywood ramp. Theo looked inspired. No. He looked at me. You don't even know what I'm proposing. I know you, Hank laughed. At hole 5, he told us where the original developer tent had stood. At hole 6, he remembered a girl who won 4 weekends in a row and demanded a championship trophy taller than she was. At hole 7, he explained that the original windmill broke after one day because nobody considered Idaho wind during construction. Theo looked toward my windmill. We should reinforce ours. It turns by hand. Wind remains ambitious. Brenda followed the entire round. She did not play. Not yet. She listened. At lucky 9, Hank stopped. The black original ball sat inside the display case. I unlocked it. You want this one? He looked at the ball for several seconds. No. Why? Championship ball stays with the course. This isn't the original course. Close enough. I handed him a modern, black ball instead. He placed it on the tee. Everyone stepped back. Lucky 9 curved gently along the cedar bumper before dropping toward the cup. Hank studied it with surprising seriousness. Brenda leaned toward Walter. He has been here before. 24 years ago. I mean this version. Walter looked toward me. Midnight. Brenda sighed. Hank swung. The ball rolled down the lane, struck the cedar bumper, curved inward, and stopped less than an inch from the cup. Theo gasped. Cruel. Hank stared. You built the slope wrong. I built the slope yesterday. Still wrong. Brenda stepped closer. You hit it too softly. Everyone looked at her. She noticed. What? Hank turned toward her. You think you can do better? I already did. You played this hole? She won the board social, Walter said. Hank raised his eyebrows. President? Yes. Holding course record? No, Theo said. Brenda pointed at him. I won. Winning is not the course record. Who has the record? Theo smiled. Nolan's 12-year-old neighbor, Maisie Chen. Brenda looked personally wounded. Impossible. 22. I had 24. Mathematics remains unforgiving. Hank held out the putter. Show me. Brenda looked at me. I shrugged. She took the club. No clipboard. No inspection. No rule book. Just a golf ball. She placed it on lucky 9. Biscuit sat beside the tee. Brenda looked down at him. If you steal this, I will report you. He wagged his tail. She putted. The ball hit the cedar bumper perfectly, curved toward the cup, circled the edge, and dropped. Hole in 1. Hank slapped his knee. Brenda's face lit up. Theo looked at the score sheet. Strong recreational performance. She handed him the putter. Write it down. I will use pen. Thank you. Then Hank did something none of us expected. He took out his wallet. Inside was a folded photograph. The picture showed the original 2002 course. At lucky 9 stood a much younger Hank, beside several neighborhood founders. One woman in the photograph looked strangely familiar. Brenda noticed. That's my mother. We all turned. Hank nodded. Marilyn Shaw. Brenda took the photograph. My mother lived here before I did. She bought one of the first houses. She never told me she worked on the mini golf course. She didn't. What was she doing here? Hank smiled. Winning. He pointed toward a woman in the front row holding a plastic trophy. She won the first adult tournament. Brenda stared at the picture. Her mother looked completely different from the woman Brenda usually described. No formal blouse, no carefully arranged hair, no clipboard. She wore denim shorts, sneakers, and a paper visor. She was laughing. Brenda touched the photograph with one finger. She hated games. Hank shook his head. She hated losing. Walter coughed. That sounds genetically relevant. Brenda gave him a look. Hank continued. Marilyn helped convince the developer to keep the weekend course open an extra month. Said people needed somewhere to meet before the clubhouse was finished. Brenda sat on the bench beside Lucky 9. My mother complained about everything. She complained while helping. That also sounds right. A small smile appeared, then disappeared. My mother died 12 years ago. Hank nodded. I heard. Nobody rushed to turn the moment into something sentimental. It did not need that. The photograph was enough. Brenda had spent weeks treating mini-golf as something foreign to the neighborhood. Her own mother had helped keep the first course alive. Theo looked toward me. Do not say it. I wasn't going to. You were thinking irony. I was thinking genetics. Worse. Hank handed the photograph to Brenda. Keep it. She shook her head. It is yours. I have copies. She studied her mother again, then placed the photograph carefully inside her bag. That was the emotional twist none of us had expected. Not a tragic inheritance, not a memorial, just proof that the woman who cared most about controlling how Maple Ridge looked came from someone who once helped make it messy, social, and fun. The course stayed open that afternoon. Hank played a second round. Brenda joined him. She donated $5 after losing hole 6 to the moving pool noodles. Theo wrote, Pool Noodles 1. President 0. She made him erase it. He rewrote it smaller. By sunset, Biscuit's whole fund held $238. We used the extra money for another trash bin and a small water station along the walking path. Hank became a regular visitor. Not at midnight. Mostly. He returned every other Saturday morning, walking from his daughter's house nearby. Sometimes he told stories about the original course. Sometimes he played quietly. He never beat Maisie's record. That bothered him deeply. The HOA problem, however, was not finished. Brenda still had one complaint left. At the next board session, she argued that even though Biscuit Hills no longer generated traffic or commercial activity, the course remained a substantial alteration of my yard. Several residents supported keeping it. Others worried everyone might start building recreational features. That was fair. Nobody wanted Maple Ridge to become 18 different backyard amusement parks. So I proposed something Brenda did not expect. I would remove 3 holes. Theo reacted like I had announced the death of mathematics. What? 6 is enough. 9 is tradition. 9 is maintenance. Golf requires 9. Mini golf requires poor judgment. He looked toward Brenda. This is her fault. Brenda raised both hands. I said nothing. I continued. The remaining 6 holes would stay low, removable, and contained behind the fence. No organized public events, no paid entry, no permanent lighting or amplified sound. The windmill would remain under height limits, and every playing surface could be removed without damaging the lawn. In return, the HOA would stop treating ordinary private recreation as a commercial business unless residents actually sold access. Brenda read the proposal. You are voluntarily reducing the course? Yes. Why? Because revenge should be funny. She looked confused. Not exhausting? Sandra laughed. The compromise passed. No dramatic board collapse, no investigation, no resignation, no legal loophole. Just a ridiculous dispute finally becoming reasonable because everyone had spent enough time inside the joke to understand where the real problem ended. Theo mourned holes 3, 5, and 8 for 14 days. He held a private ceremony. I did not at all. Biscuit Hills became a 6-hole neighborhood curiosity. Lucky 9 kept its name, even though it was now hole 6. Theo argued that historical accuracy mattered more than arithmetic. Nobody had the energy to fight him. The original championship box stayed beside it. Hank's photograph joined the display. So did the picture of Brenda's mother holding her plastic trophy. Brenda approved that one personally. She also created one new HOA rule. Not against golf, against unscheduled inspections involving recreational equipment. It stated that board representatives entering private property for a non-emergency inspection must arrange access in advance, no admission needed. Theo proposed adding, "Putters optional." The board rejected it. The revenge came full circle the following spring. Brenda received a complaint about a small patch of damaged grass in her own yard. A rabbit had dug beneath her roses. She called me. Not the landscaping committee. Me. I have a hole. I looked through the phone toward Biscuit, who was sleeping upside down beneath the kitchen table. How large? About 10 inches. Visible? Yes. Potential trip hazard? She sighed. Nolan. Would you like the mini golf starter package? No. Cedar sign? No. Partout? No. Windmill? Absolutely not. I laughed. What do you want? There was a pause. Do you still have extra topsoil? I did. I walked 2 houses down with a shovel and helped her fill the hole. No measuring tape, no photographs, no violation notice. When we finished, Brenda looked at the repaired patch. My mother probably would have turned it into hole 10. Your mother understood development potential. She smiled. Do not tell Theo. Too late. He appeared at the sidewalk carrying a tiny flag. Brenda pointed at him. No, he stopped. I have not said anything. I know your face. He slowly lowered the flag. Biscuit came running behind him. Brenda stepped in front of the repaired patch. Keep that dog away from here. Biscuit stared at the fresh soil, then at Brenda, then at me. I clipped on his leash. Some history did not need repeating. People in Maple Ridge still joke that Biscuit built the mini golf course. Technically, he only built hole 1. The rest came from one HOA president taking a patch of dirt too seriously, one retired math teacher taking revenge not seriously enough, and a neighborhood discovering that the ground beneath them had been entertaining people long before any of us arrived. The funniest part was the admission policy. I never made real money from it. The only HOA members who paid $3 did so voluntarily, usually because Sandra refused to start a round without declaring herself a paying customer. Walter still left dollars in the donation jar whenever he scored 6. Brenda never paid admission again. She did something worse. She became good at the course. Within 6 months, she finally beat Maisie's 22. She framed the scorecard. I have seen it in her office, right beside the photograph of her mother winning in 2002. Biscuit still occasionally sniffs around hole 1, although the repaired drainage line means he has stopped excavating. I sometimes catch him staring at the turf as though wondering why humans surrounded his perfectly good hole with 6 weeks of woodworking. He is probably right. The entire story began because Karen complained about one dog hole. It ended with an HOA president practicing bank shots, a 79-year-old midnight golfer becoming my friend, and enough voluntary admission money to improve every dog station along the walking trail. That is the kind of victory we keep around at Sovereign Verdict, not because every rule is bad, but because sometimes the difference between a nuisance and a community tradition is whether anyone bothers asking why the hole is there before filling it. If you enjoy original HOA revenge, where the punishment gets funnier the more seriously someone takes it, subscribe to Sovereign Verdict. There are plenty more neighborhoods where common sense still has to play through.